Hi, my name is Lydia. I run Celandine Design, and this tutorial is going to help you mock up your designs on different products. So the first thing we're going to do is open up Google and go to a site called Free Great Picture, which is going to give us some great product pictures that we can work with. They have a lot of different image categories that we can work with, but what we're going to be looking at is the still life category in the wallpaper section. And if we open up that category, we can see a lot of nice product photos of good quality, good size, that give us some white or blank products that we can try and mock up our work on. And these are a few images that I downloaded from the site. You can use typical products like mugs or pillows, bedspreads, bags, but don't be afraid to try crazier or more interesting things. Okay, now we'll open up Photoshop, and before we start, I'm going to show you the basic method that we'll be using to make these mockups. What we'll use is layer modes, and I don't know if you worked with layer modes before. There are things like multiply, overlay, screen. There are different settings you can give to your layer, which make it interact with the layers below it, so the layer stops being an opaque solid thing and becomes sort of transparent, and it can interact in different ways with whatever lies beneath it. So I'm going to show you how layers work, basically how layer modes work. If we have a square of color here and then we just put some decorations over it, it really doesn't matter what it is. So what I'm doing here is my square is on one layer and my decorations are on a separate layer. And once I've drawn them out, I'm going to change the mode of the top layer, and you will see how the two layers will start interacting in different ways. It's not difficult to look online and see a definition of what each layer mode does. They tend to change the lower layer by either darkening it or lightening it. But the results that you will get are often unpredictable, and I won't go into details and define all of those here because I don't think you really need them. I only use 2 or 3 different layer modes. If you're ever curious about what they do, you can always experiment and just run through the whole list. Just click on the first one that says normal, and then just run the arrow key down the list, and you will see the changes. You can see here how the picture is changing as I'm moving these modes down. So you can pick whichever one looks best to you, and you could even layer them on top of each other. So you can choose one mode and then duplicate the layer and set it to a different mode, and these combinations can also give you interesting results. The mode we're going to be working with is multiply, and it will let us see the product beneath our design and allow us to superimpose the design on top of it in a way that makes it look like the product is actually painted with the design. Okay, I'm going to throw away these layers that we were playing with and open up the image that I want to work with. I picked this picture of a chair because I thought it would be fun. I could show you both a very simple way in which we can mock up a wallpaper on the wall of a room, and then we'll also try to mock up a design on the chair to see the challenges that poses. The first thing we need to do is to take our marquee selection tool and try to select the part that we want to be working with, the part that we want to cover in our design. So I will first try to pick out the background or the wall in this image. I'm avoiding the chair, and I will carefully work my way around the corners. I don't have to be entirely careful at the first pass. It's perfectly okay to make a rougher selection and then later go in and pick out the little details. I've chosen the chair partly because it's more simple to pick out things with straight lines, but of course you can work with curves as well. It just takes a bit more patience. I've made a separate layer and I've just filled in what I just selected, just so it's easier for me to see. The pink is just a standing color that we will be using, so we know exactly where our selection is. I'll pick out these little holes in the chair to make sure that all of our wall is visible and that our final mock-up looks as realistic as possible. There are some challenges with these selections. If you leave a thin row of pixels and it shows white, it will not look as tidy as you might want. And there are lots of mistakes that you can do with the selection, so I do suggest that you take as much care as possible and really zoom in, go down to the closest level that you can, and really put in the time. It is very tedious work. I hate doing selections. It really kills me. But it makes all the difference. A lot of the final effect of your mock-up is going to depend on how careful you were with your selection and how precisely you picked out that exact line that goes between the object that you're covering in your pattern and the rest of the objects in the picture. I'm going to try to pick out some details around this cactus now, and you don't have to worry about things like the cactus needles, because don't forget that our pattern layer is going to be transparent in a way, and it will show certain details from below. So you will see, once you do the mock-up, you will see whether your selection is good enough or not, and you can always adjust it. It's not a difficult process to just go back and fix the selection. This is why I'm making the selection shape on this separate layer, which I'm later going to hide beneath my picture layer, so it's not going to be, this pink is not going to be visible. The only reason it's there is that so I can control click it and easily get that selection shape that I need once I have my pattern open and I know which section of it I want to use on my product. Okay, I think the cactus looks nice, and this is our whole background or our whole wall area selected. So now I'm going to hide this pink layer down beneath it. You can switch off its visibility as well. And now I'm going to pick out the pattern tile that I want to use. This is a huge tile, so I'm just going to use the entirety of the tile. You can also tile out the design and use more than one tile, of course, depending on the sizing that you want to achieve. I'm just going to reduce the size of this file because it's absolutely huge. So we're going to bring that down to some sort of manageable size. I'm using 3000 pixels here, which is still pretty big, but I want to have some room to scale down once I'm over in the mockup file and just see how different sizes look, because sometimes you might surprise yourself. You might look at you might think that you wanted to scale it a certain size, but then when you see it at a bigger or smaller size, you think, that looks really nice. So it's nice to have that room. I'm just going to scale this to a sort of manageable format. The worst thing is to have the file too small. I mean, you want to have room to, you can always shrink it down. It's not hard to shrink it down. Okay, so now this file is basically covering, the pattern is covering my whole page, and now I'm going to set the mode of this layer to multiply, and presto, this is what we wanted. Now we have that effect where we can see the picture behind the pattern, and the pattern is sort of sitting on top of it kind of neatly. So if we set that about where we want different parts of our design to show, and then we select the selection layer that we previously made and just invert the selection and delete the excess, now we have a perfectly fitting wall cover there. The wall is pretty featureless, so there aren't many magical things we can do to make this fit even better. One thing we can do is make a copy of just the wall segment of our original picture and modify it a bit. I say do this on a copy layer because if you mess up your original picture, then you're in trouble, because later you will want to fix it. What I'm doing here is I'm just playing with the levels or curves. This is levels, but you can also do this through playing with curves to try and see which level of I don't even know how to define what this is. It's basically like the darkest and lightest shade in the image, and then you can play with them and see what works best. We can't do magic with the wall because it's just a wall, but you will see this will come into much better effect once we're working on the chair and we have these dark and light layers. I'm just trying to darken the corners a little bit, just to give a little bit of shadow there to make it feel like it's a real wall and that we haven't just pasted a picture there. Okay, so the wall has some subtle shadows now. You can see them better when we take the pattern off. And I've decided there's this board that goes along the lower part of the wall. I'm sure it has a proper name, but I don't know it. I've decided I don't want that covered with the pattern. I'd rather have it remain white, so I'll just delete that section. And this is pretty much our wall mock-up done. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the chair. I've already done the selection off camera just so we don't waste time. And I've done it the same way as the previous one on a separate layer, and the magic already begins here because when I apply multiply to that layer you can see how the chair suddenly becomes hot pink. So this is also a technique you can use to just recolor an object that you have in a color that you don't find appealing. Now I'm going to pick a new pattern tile that is going to be the pattern that is going to cover our chair. And here it is. I'm really picking these at random just from my recent files folder, so do forgive if the aesthetics of the final product don't turn out amazing, but I'm just working with what's at hand. Same thing, I'm going to reduce the size of this so it's manageable and take it over to the other file, just copy it. Don't close this file because you might need to come back to it. Depending on how complex your object is, you might need to cover different facets of it with different parts of the design just to increase the realism. So again, I'm setting this to multiply so that I can see the chair beneath, and now I'm going to change the scale so that I can immediately get a feel for how it's going to look on the finished product. I like this sort of a fairly large kind of a repeat, so I think I'm going to leave it at this size, and then I will just again select my pink chair layer and invert the selection, delete the excess, and then my chair is covered. Now this already looks reasonably nice, but since the pattern is quite intense in coloring, it doesn't show through as much. The chair actually doesn't show through as much as I'd like. So I'm going to bring down the opacity of the pattern layer just a little bit. And the next thing I want to do is, again, from my product photo layer, I want to select just the chair shape and copy it onto a new layer. So I have just the chair from my original photo on a separate layer, and again I'm going to adjust its levels so that you can see the chair becoming darker. So that my pattern is not overpowering it as much as it currently is. After I've set the levels to some state that I like, I'm also going to use dodge and burn to try and bring out the shadows and the highlights of the product beneath the pattern, just to make it more alive. There we can see our wallpaper pattern in the background. We tried to see how it meshes with our foreground. It isn't actually looking, it's looking a bit overpowering again, so I'll just fade out. I'll reduce the opacity of the wallpaper and make it really faint so that it's not fighting. You see how it sort of competes with the chair, and we don't want that, so we'll bring that down. And then we'll pick out the burn tool, which can enhance. It's got the ability to enhance either the shadows, the highlights, or the midtones of the layer that you're working on. I usually start with midtones. I bring out the bring up the opacity of it to somewhere around 50%, and you can see if it's working too strongly on your first stroke, you can reduce the opacity. Burn is a brilliant tool. It helps so much when you want to make something look a little more realistic. You can use burn midtones on any illustration that is looking too flat, and just see whether just a little touch of burn actually makes it look a bit more three-dimensional. So I'm working with burn shadows here and trying to bring out these the cracks between the boards of the chair's seat. Basically wherever the chair is dark, I'm trying to make it even darker. You can see it's becoming way too dark for the actual photo, but we don't care about that. This is why we made a copy of the chair and we didn't work on our original photograph, because we are messing this chair up. We're making it way too, we're making its shadows way too dark, and we're making its highlights way too light. This again is a process that will take some time to get down. You will play with this, you will fail a bunch of times, you will fail, I promise. And don't be afraid of that. Don't worry about not getting it right on the first go, because it's just a learning process and it will become easier with time. Okay, if you look at the front of this chair, you'll see how the butterfly really transitions across the front part of the seat down to the legs in a way that makes it look really unnatural. So what I've decided is I'm going to make a selection of just the front part of the front legs of the chair and apply a different piece of the pattern there, so we don't have that transition of the butterfly, which really tips us off that this is just a mock-up and not a very carefully done one at that. So again, we'll use our signature hot pink and select those front legs. You can use your old chair selection to make the selection process easier. Just delete the excess, and then we're going to pick out a new part of the pattern to put on those front legs. This is the pattern that we've copied across. Again, we're going to make it transparent through multiply, just so we can see what we're doing, and we're going to make it approximately the same size. You can get away with some fudging. You don't always have to be super careful that everything is exactly the right scale. Just play with things and see how it looks, basically. Okay, so now what we want is we want to delete the front legs part from the old pattern, so that the two aren't overlapping, because they are both transparent, so they will show through each other and make a mess. And then we want to delete everything except those front legs from our new pattern layer. And you can see this is looking kind of better because that butterfly isn't floating down the front of the chair anymore. We have a different pattern down there now. I'm just going to play with dodge and burn a bit more to see if I can achieve an even more realistic and more interesting effect on this chair. So I'm working on the chair layer, and yeah, I didn't mention it before, but dodge is the opposite of burn. So burn will make things darker and dodge will make things lighter, and both of them can work on either the highlights, the shadows, or the midtones. And there's a third command that is grouped, a third tool that is grouped together with them, and this is a sponge tool, and the sponge can either saturate or desaturate whatever you're working on. So when you're burning an area and making it darker, sometimes it gets an unnatural additional hue, like a bluish tint or just some strange color that is messing up your work, and you don't want it there. Then you can just take the sponge, set it to desaturate, and take out that strange tint from there. Now I just want to show you one final thing, and that is how we might go about mocking up a floor. This is going to be incredibly rough, and it's going to look horrible because I'm using the same busy pattern for the third time in this image, and I'm going to use this eye-searing red, which is really going to it's not going to make a very pretty picture, but I'm just trying to make a point here and showing you how you can work this. I'm going to reduce the size of this file, and then I'm actually going to give it a bigger canvas size so that I can show you a transform function called perspective. And what we can do with perspective is we can make things look as if they are not just slanted to the side, but also as if they're sort of receding to the distance. And it's a little bit of a crude effect. Like, it never works quite as nicely as you might want it to, but it can sometimes give a good effect. So this, if you pull the middle, then it'll just slant, and if you pull at the corners, then it will sort of really recede into the distance. One side of it will recede, and you can just push and pull and see what different effects you get. And whoops, that is not quite the best. There we go. Now this is sort of it's becoming a kind of a floor with a certain perspective. So you just set that at whatever you think looks good, and then when you pull it over into the other file, you will see whether it's giving you the right look or not. And now that we brought this slanted pattern tile over, We can try and set it on our floor section and see how it works. As you can see, I've made it too small, so I'm just going to stretch it out. You won't lose too much quality since the tile is kind of warped anyway, so, and it's going to be the floor, so I don't think it's going to be too damaged by just stretching it. But also, if you were doing this for an important presentation, then you might just go over and make a bigger file size. I just won't bother. So we're going to set it at approximately where the floor would be. We're going to delete the things that are currently in front of it, like our chair and the plant pot. And then we're going to play with the just make it a little bit bigger, because just there's a tiny corner that I couldn't fill there, so I'm just stretching it out a little more. And that's about right. I think we're gonna set it down right there. Then we're just going to set that mode to multiply as well, and delete the chair out of our new floor so that they're not overlapping. There we go, bing. And you can see it's all kind of sitting together now. And essentially, I'd say we've done it. So you can use these techniques that I've laid out here to mock up your design on just about any product for which you have a blank picture. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, you can write me an email at celandinedesign@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Celandine Design. I do answer messages. I answer questions. I think artists need to learn from each other, and I think we are each other's greatest allies. And I hope you share this video with other people who might find it useful.